This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
I don't know exactly when this would have been, but I think I might have been around sort of 14, 15. The first time that I saw G3 and saw Eric Johnson performing with Joe Satriani and Steve Vai, it kind of completely changed the trajectory of I think my playing, because this was the first time that I'd heard someone I think Stevie Ray Vaughan inspired, but also someone that was delving into this jazz side of playing, and specifically the tune Manhattan really stuck in my head a lot. It's my favourite, I think my favourite Eric Johnson song, except for maybe Lonely in the Night. Venus Isle is definitely my favourite album, but there's this one lick in there that I kind of attribute to me going down the jazz rabbit hole. Maybe it costed me a lot of money in the long run, but I think it's like my first time hearing an altered lick, and probably the first altered lick that I ever learned. Now, if you're looking for a video specifically going into what altered licks or the altered scale is, this might not be the best one for you, but you might not need to know all that theory anyway. But let's get into it. Yeah, if you want this Helix preset, by the way, this is called Eric Freeze. I'm using an HX Stomp, and this is what I'm going to be using to freeze the tones as we go through the lesson. Patreon will be the place to get the tab as well, where hopefully we'll have a little bit of a worksheet to take us through and extract some of the juice from this specific lick. The specific lick that I'm talking about is just after that, which to me is just like the perfect introduction to what the altered sound is. So what is the altered scale? Basically, if you've got something like this, which is our dominant, if we have a sharp 5 in it and all the alterations, you can essentially play the melodic minor scale up a tone from the root note of that chord. So in this case, it would be B melodic minor, and we call that kind of like altered harmony or melodic minor harmony, and it's kind of like this pool of otherworldly harmony. It's kind of got this really and then it resolves to E flat minor. Now another place that I'd have heard a lot of this early on would have been maybe George Benson, which might have been like my next logical step after hearing John Petrucci talk about some of his influences, and maybe Eric Johnson, like Wes Montgomery, Pat Metheny and George Benson might have been my next kind of ports of call. Now I want to talk about this probably in a key which is a little bit more guitar friendly, because I don't think E flat minor is necessarily the one. So we'll do it in E minor. But I'll put it up in the other key as well. So we'll kind of look at what's happened. So if we're now in E minor, our 5 is going to be B7. And so if you look up here, one really easy way to think about this, by the way, is that that's still pentatonic, right? This one's not. This one is, and then this one is our 4, as in like the C if we're thinking about it in G, or our flat 6 if we're thinking about it in E minor. So it's really just this note. And so another way, I think RickGraham is where I kind of heard this from. Instead of E minor over this, you could just flatten the E and you get that altered sound. Now that's a really, really, really powerful little piece of knowledge. And you could sound like you know the altered scale without really knowing too much there. So if we were playing in E minor and we hear the B7, we could just flatten our E and make it sound like we knew what was going on. Alternatively, we can play in C melodic minor to get the sounds of B altered, right? So that's something else to think about. So what does the lick actually do? So we start here on the 14th fret, then we hit our 15th, then we hit our 12th, 12, 12, 13, and then 15, 14. So that's a really, really simple lick. Now what we could do with that is move it into other keys. So if I was playing in D minor, A7 would be my 5, and what we do, and we're ending on the 5, so we're targeting our 5th, or the root of whatever we're playing, on the A string. So you could quite easily find this lick because it's going to be ending on your root note. If we were in C minor, there we go, we've got a G7, we're going to end up on a G on the A string. What about if we were playing in B minor? The cool thing about an altered lick as well is that essentially this could work in major as well, right? So if we're playing over an A7 altered, right, we're going to end on the A, and our root will be D7 then. So you can use it to do like a major, 5-to-1 as well, right? So one other way to think about it is that you're starting on the flat 7 of whatever you're playing. So if we're playing on over an A7, we're starting on the G. So that's kind of the lick and what I wanted to kind of get into my playing a bit more, and I think that's a fairly cool, easy bit of language. Another thing that I might do would be to move this around and this would be much harder, and moving this around diatonically in the melodic minor realm. So we've got this, so we're going to try and move everything up a tone, so you get and there's another nice one. I would use that now that I know. Well, that's nice. Yeah. Or that. Some really cool sounds that I'll put more of those up on the Patreon to explore, but that's kind of what I wanted to kind of explain today or dive into today. That kind of my first introduction into that altered sound. So don't forget that if you've got like a 5 altered chord, our altered scale is kind of built by going 1 tone, semitone above where we were, and that gives us our notes of the altered scale. And a melodic minor scale goes like the minor scale, but we've got a sharp 6 and a sharp 7. Instead of that, you have a there'll be better people explaining why that is, but there's a kind of really tidy little lick. And also don't forget that little piece of RickGraham wisdom that if you take your normal pentatonic scale, you can go to make it sound like you know what's going on. And if you want this preset, Eric Freeze, it's in the Freeze Expressions folder on Gumroad if you're wanting to check that out. I'll catch you in another video soon. Patreon will be the place to get the tab and the backing track, and I'll catch you around.